So pages 206 to 207, we are covering the second two pages of Behind the Scenes, Elizabeth Keckley, the employee of Mrs. Lincoln. Okay, so let me share my screen and we'll go over the learning targets and the goal for the day. Okay, so have your R books ready. So we'll be covering 206 to 207. First learning target, I can analyze what a text clearly says and make inferences about what the text does not clearly say. I can figure out the key idea of a text and say text details as evidence. So there's your do now. Make sure you do that. Okay, it's a prediction. Today, when we read a text, we can, or today's goal, when we read a text, we can't count on the author to directly tell us every important idea. Today, we'll practice making inferences to understand ideas the text does not clearly say. Your two words are approach and more. The definitions are here. Make sure those are filled in. And then I gave an example sentence of my own for each of those. Let's remember the prior reading. Okay, let me put a period in there. Elizabeth Keckley has just learned that President Lincoln has been shot. She makes or wakes the people she lives with and tells them that she must go to the White House. They dress quickly and go out into the street. Let's read to find out what happens next, or reread because we already listened to it once. Okay. I want you to think about the key idea as well as I'm reading. How do people in Washington, D.C. react to the news of the assassination? On page 207 in the center, we'll go over this at the end as well. Hold on, second one. Making inferences. Why does Mrs. Lincoln want Keckley to join her at the White House? And then with number 3, I'll show you the page once we're done. Okay, so let me reread those pages. We walked rapidly toward the White House. On our way, we passed the residence of Secretary Seward. It was surrounded by armed soldiers, keeping back all intruders with the point of a bayonet. As we approached the White House, we saw that it too was surrounded with soldiers. Every entrance was strongly guarded. No one was permitted. The guard at the gate told us that Mr. Lincoln had not been brought home, but he refused to give any other information. More excited than ever, we wandered down the street. Grief and anxiety were making me weak, and as we joined the large crowd, I began to feel as meek and humble as a child. A gray-haired old man was passing. His face seemed so full of kindness and sorrow that I gently touched his arm and begged, "Will you please, sir, to tell me whether Mr. Lincoln is dead or not?" "Not dead," he replied, "but dying." And with a heavy step, he passed on. "Not dead, but dying." We returned home with heavy hearts. I could not sleep. I wanted to go to Mrs. Lincoln's, but I did not know where to find her. I would have to follow. I would have to wait until morning. The hours dragged slowly. Page 207. Morning came at last, and a sad morning it was. The flags that floated so gaily yesterday now were draped in black and hung in silent folds at half mast. The president was dead, and the nation was mourning for him. Every house was draped in black, and every face wore a solemn look. People spoke in subdued tones and walked silently about the streets. About 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, a carriage drove up to the door, and a messenger asked for Elizabeth Keckley. "Who wants her?" I asked. "I come from Mrs. Lincoln. If you are Mrs. Keckley, come with me immediately to the White House." I hastily put on my shawl and bonnet, and I was driven to the White House. Everything about the building was sad and solemn. I was quickly shown to Mrs. Lincoln's room, and entering, I saw Mrs. Lincoln tossing uneasily upon a bed. The room was darkened, and the only person in it, besides the widow of the president, was Mrs. Secretary Wells, who had spent the night with her. Bowing to Mrs. Wells, I went to the bedside. Ah, never was a man so widely mourned before. The whole world bowed their heads in grief when Abraham Lincoln died. Okay, so when you are doing your pages, let me get that up and log back in because it logged me out. Let me log back in. Okay, so now we're set. Okay, so the three questions you have. There's your key idea. How do people in Washington, D.C. react to the news of Lincoln's assassination? Why does Mrs. Lincoln want Keckley to join her at the White House? And Keckley ends by saying that the whole world bowed their heads in grief when Lincoln died. Write a sentence explaining what she means. Use evidence from the text. Make sure you use complete sentences and punctuation and post-it notes if you need more room.